Hello, and welcome in my studio. Some time ago I was asked by Spanish director Juan Rodriguez Priso to create music for his full-length documentary called La Controversia de Valladolid. And this was a very exciting opportunity for me because I don't often get such big projects as a composer for film. So I spent a lot of time on creating the music, and I thought it would be very cool to share a bit about the process of the recordings and the compositions. So today I'm doing a behind the scenes on the scoring process. And to start with, I would like to show you the music that I have created for the opening scene.
Era un 21 de diciembre del año del Señor de 1511. Hacía poco más de un año que los dominicos habían llegado a la isla de la Hispaniola, lugar donde llevaba yo tiempo ejerciendo mis labores de encomendero. Desde su sencillez y generosidad fueron tomando contacto con las gentes que habitaban la isla, indios y españoles. Y se toparon con un dramático panorama que les removía.
So the most challenging thing when I was scoring this documentary is that it has a lot of talking and conversation, but it often also needed music at the same time. So then I really had to weave the music through the talking. And the way I would approach this is that I would watch the scene and listen to the scene and then sit down at the piano, and then I would start improvising until I would find the right rhythm, and then at the same time I would also discover like the right mood and tone that would fit the scene. And then once I had the tempo locked in, I would start composing all the other elements and adding like textures or synthesizers and strings. And I just showed you the opening scene, and this is followed by the first scene, which is a preach. And here I really wanted to create an intimate atmosphere. So I composed something there for piano, violin and viola to have like the chamber music setting.
Los indios están extrayendo el oro con el que construimos nuestras ciudades. Incluso nuestras iglesias. Un oro que sirve para financiar nuestras conquistas en lugares remotos y hace girar la inmensa rueda del comercio. A todos nos alcanza el sudor de los indios, y al que más, a su majestad y a sus obispos.
So here the piano really carries the rhythm and brings movement into the scene without interfering too much with the sermon of the priest, because it's staying in the background and it has a very supportive role. And to me the viola is really important in this scene because it amplifies the emotions of the priest and makes it more dramatic. To give a bit more insight in the composition process, I would like to show you the Ableton project and how I made the development from the first demo into the final mix and recording. So here we are inside of the Ableton project. So this is where I created all the music, and it's sorted in folders. Like this is the piano, for example, piano FX, string textures, strings, and then here is the demo that I put here. So I started composing with the piano, it sounds like this. And then also I added the string texture, which is an improvisation from a friend of mine on cello. We spent like a few hours just recording those chords, like it's 20 layers stacked on top of each other to create a texture. And then the first thing that I added, like in MIDI, was the viola melody. So this is viola melody right there. It's being played by Spitfire solo strings. They sound really good in general, but then actually for this melody, also when I sent this demo to the director, he didn't like it so much, and that is because there's like all these fast notes and it just doesn't sound very realistic. It's super difficult to make a solo instrument sound realistic with MIDI. But luckily I got the chance to record it with real strings, so let's listen. So this is the demo. And That's the viola. With a full string ensemble. Piano, please. So now you could hear how it was sounding as a demo before, and then how it was sounding after I made the recordings. And now I will go back to the beginning of this song, and I will show you the separate elements. So there we are, the start. So I composed this first with MIDI strings. These are the MIDI strings. And this is also the composition of the opening. But then you're listening now to one string quintet, which is playing it, which is this take. It's a lot of different mics mixed together. And then here another take from the same quintet, but it's like 2 takes on top of each other, and take 3 also. So this is 3 takes. So it was like the sound is growing and becoming more big. So this is 15 players. But then I layered this with a lot of elements. A little bit of MIDI strings in there still, but they're kind of invisible. But another one is the cello player that I recorded with one day in the studio. Sounding like this. And then also the Juno synthesizer. So that's playing these notes. And this is the Juno synth with the space echo. It always sounds so nice and warm. I love layering piano or strings or anything with Juno 60. And then I also did an improvisation with the strings. So this is the entire string quintet, and what they were doing here is that they were just playing the chords without all the melodies, like super basic chords, but then they were improvising a lot with their bowing, like their articulations. So they would do some tremolo or do like different kind of bowings, and this created a very nice sound that was like sitting so well behind the main strings. And what I really loved about this is that it made the sound like more rich and more big and gave it a nice kind of ambient glue. So I always love working with layers like that. For example, on the piano, I do it in the same way. So in the piano I have just the piano recording that you hear here, but then I add a sub bass and a cassette bass. And actually there's also a piano FX, but it's only playing in the end. So for example, that's sounding like this. And what I did in the piano FX was just playing like a very rhythmic kind of improvisation that I was doing on top of the piano, and then I would just put this very softly, and it's creating this piano kind of ambience. So yeah, but let's get back to where we were. So in the second part of the song, when the preach is happening, that is where the solo viola melody is happening. So basically this is like the solo viola melody and the piano. But then also here I wanted the sound to be so much bigger than just having these acoustic elements, because I always love working with layers. So that's here I also used the texture from the string quintet that I was using in the beginning. Also, it became a really important element in the second part. So this is the texture that they're playing. Just an improvisation in the background. and then that. I love it so much, like having those two elements together, because it's just, when you're listening to everything, like I also at the piano, it's interesting to me because you're just, like your brain is only registering the viola melody. Like, that is the most important part that is catching your attention. But there's so much more like happening in the background, but it's all super supportive. And that is like making the sound a lot bigger and to me also more interesting. Because it's supporting each other. Yeah, so in the second part it's like the piano, the texture strings, and then this string quartet with like the viola melody. And I could also show you shortly, because I did a lot of processing. Like of course I did like all sorts of, this is the reverb, not the EQ from strings, for example, and a compressor, and then a post EQ, post compressor EQ. But also there's a lot of sends and returns. So for example, it's here. This is just the send and returns for the strings with some automation there. And it's all going here to this, to all these groups. So that's reverbs and compressors. But for example, I could turn off the reverbs. So now you're listening to the same part, but then only with the two compressors that I created are active. So now you're listening to the composition, but then so much more similar to how it was recorded in the room. And it's actually been recorded in 3 different rooms, because the piano was recorded in my studio, the string part in the living room of my parents, and then the texture strings was recorded on another recording day in another much bigger space. But then to really connect like all those elements and also create like a sound that is more alive, the reverb is very important. So that is like a way in mixing it. That so just to create a transition. So this is the climax. Very similar to how it was recorded, just with EQ and compression in there. And now comes back to reverb. So yeah, I think you can hear that I use quite a lot of reverb in this mix, and that I made the space so much bigger than it was in the beginning, because I was aiming for like a more cinematic and ambient sound. So yeah, this has been some background info about the compositions that I created for the documentary La Controversia de Valladolid. And the full score is now online, so you can listen to all of it on our digital platforms. So please go have a listen.